back, everyone. It has been a few weeks since the last podcast. It's been a bit of a whirlwind with St. Patrick's Day and the few days off. We've had a new name for the college and the College of FET. And of course, there's major news around the world at the moment to do with COVID and of course, dreadful things that are happening in Ukraine. And those are things are very much dominating our thoughts. So with this being episode 13 of the FE Hit and us heading in towards the final few weeks of the course, you've got assignment deadlines and then probably exams to face into. It's a very good time to welcome my guest today, who is Eithne Hunt. Eithne, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, James.
Eithne is a lecturer in UCC in the Occupational Therapy Department. She's also the creator of a resource called Everyday Matters, which deals specifically with well-being and how this can be applied to you as students. So it's very appropriate that you're here with us today, Eithne. Is that a fair description, if somewhat brief, as to what you do?
Yeah, sure, James. Thanks very much. I suppose just to add one or two bits, I'm an occupational therapist, as you said, and my clinical work before I came to UCC was in adolescent mental health, so supporting young people's mental health and well-being, and that was the focus of my PhD. And now a lot of my work within the university is both teaching occupational therapy students about the relationship between everyday activities and well-being, and that's the focus of a lot of my research activities as well currently.
Okay, thanks a million. So in terms of, like, I know this is a massive subject and so on, but just to tackle the current things that students are facing into, would you have any sort of baseline essentials when it comes to well-being that you would sort of just put out there as headlines that we could all perhaps incorporate into our daily routines?
Sure. So you're right to say that, you know, it's a massive area and it can be quite overwhelming, I think, because people feel sometimes bombarded with all of these health messages and also a very kind of aspirational view of the perfect lifestyle, which most of us, you know, are nowhere near. So what I find helpful and the focus that I take in my work is really trying to understand how we allocate our time across the 24 hours of the day and across the 7 days of the week. So a lot of the times health and well-being information, it's kind of separated out. So you have exercise information and you have diet information and you have information about alcohol use or drug use. But I think what's missing is, well, how do we put all of that together and think about, well, how can I create a routine for myself that supports me to be well? So I would encourage people to think about their time use across the full 24 hours of the day. Within that, then we break down time use into categories. They're a bit arbitrary, and some activities that we all do, they don't easily slot into, you know, a particular category. But that said, it can be a helpful way to think about our time use. So in Everyday Matters, we break up time use into sleep, self-care, play and leisure, and study and work. And we try and not think so much about the idea of work-life balance, which sometimes sets up this idea that, you know, there is this perfect balance and perhaps we need to allocate time equally across our activities. I like to think of more work-life integration. So thinking about how can I get the right blend of all of these activities across the day. So just to take maybe a little snippet of tips from each one of those four categories. Sleep has to be prioritized, and it's often the thing that, you know, flies out the door or out the window during crunch times. Sleep is really our superpower. There's so much fascinating science around sleep and well-being now. We know that if we're sleep deprived, our cognitive ability can be as impaired as if we were under the influence of alcohol. So driving simulation studies show that. Also, we think that we can cram and retain information. Science tells us that that's not true. So our brain is like a sponge, and if we are sleep deprived when we're trying to learn information, our brain is like a waterlogged sponge, so it can't absorb the information. Also, what happens in terms of sleep and memory and learning is that we don't manage to shift information from our temporary kind of storage into the kind of the hard drive of our brain. Sleep is also vital for emotional well-being. So I would really strongly encourage people not to crunch sleep out of the 24 hours of the day. Self-care is the second category of activities, and really that, I think if we use the analogy of the battery on our phone, and we know we need to pay attention when the battery on our phone is in the red, or it's showing that it's depleted. So similarly, how do we recharge ourselves? And that's very different for all of us. There is no one size fits all in terms of self-care. For some people, I spoke to somebody yesterday and she's going away to do a spinning course in the UK. She's looking forward to it. That's my idea of hell. So we need to think about what is something that we can do for ourselves that recharges us. And again, just to note that there's a lot of messaging in this space that it might have to be, clean eating or hot yoga or whatever is kind of the latest trend. It doesn't have to be any of those things. And also it can be small little, what I would call micro breaks. So it might be taking 10 minutes to go for a really nice coffee and really trying to put your phone away and savor that experience. We know now as well, in terms of physical activity and self-care, that sometimes people think I have to do the block of 40 minutes or 60 minutes. Science tells us now, and the public health guidelines around physical activity now are that any movement matters across the day. So I would say, if you're really working hard and studying and feeling under pressure, go out and walk for 5 or 10 minutes. Try and walk at a rate that your heart rate is increased and maybe difficult to have a full conversation. Then you're kind of getting a moderate level of physical activity. I can share with you after our conversation a mindfulness toolkit that I prepared, which consists of on-the-go mindfulness practices. So it's not you need a yoga mat and you need your essential oils to be burning. These are on-the-go activities that may be helpful for people as they prepare for exams and perhaps even in the exam situation. Leisure or play and leisure, as we like to think of it, would be the third time use category. And that really is, if you ask yourself the question, what do I do for fun? Oftentimes, again, when we're busy, and we know from research, there's a Swedish psychiatrist called Marie Asberg, and she's developed work around what she calls the exhaustion funnel. So when we're busy, and often at crunch times, like coming up to exams, sleep is one of the first activities to be dropped. Play and fun activities are dropped, and then self-care can be dropped. For short bursts of time, we can probably get through that, but in the longer term, that there's long-term repercussions, and she knows from her work that exhaustion spiral can lead to burnout. So it's really important to try and do something every day just for fun. Again, that's really going to be a very personal thing. And then study and work is the other activity time use category. So obviously that could be parenting, caregiving, volunteering, part-time work, full-time work, and study. All of these, what we call productive roles. And I just would encourage people to avail of, all of the supports around study skills that exist, through your office, through the skills center. There's a lot of study strategies out there. So that's all of the time use information. Everyday Matters also has habits of mind, which I'm happy to go through, but I'm also interested if you have any questions, James.
I suppose just listening to all that, it makes a huge amount of sense. And you talk there about there's no shortage of information. Like, we've almost got information overload, and trying to organize that and process it and put it into that routine is it's a skill in itself. And sort of just spending time to sort of not be so absorbing. I mean, we're bombarded with stuff on media, social media, from, you know, there's so many outlets and sources for that now, and to take some time just to stop absorbing and just to look at what we've got, and perhaps put that into usable, and that idea of it being usable and on the go, and so on. People think of things as having to stop, and like you said, go for the whole oils and the mat thing to do the yoga, whereas there's plenty of things that can be incorporated into the time that we have. Because I certainly myself can connect with being sort of time poor and trying to cram all of these things in, whereas it's doable, but I know for a fact there's better ways for me to do it as well. So I'm just thinking in terms of I mean, the resources that you're talking about, I will certainly put links to those underneath the video and the audio from this chat for students to go, and we'll just keep reiterating Everyday Matters. Those are the resources, and we would direct people to those and have a look at them. In terms of students, where they're at right now, like there's assignment deadlines coming up before Easter and after Easter, and then the students in the College of Vet will be into exam periods starting I think the last week in April, and into certainly the first week of May. I suppose those are pressure points. Those are things that possibly could be triggering sort of more stress and anxiety, and the impact that might have on their future plans. So what particular advice would you have, or suggestions would you have for students for dealing with that kind of pressure and those kind of situations?
Yeah, it is pressurizing, and what I think it's very important to reassure people is, if they're feeling stressed in response to exams and busyness like that, that's entirely normal. There's nothing wrong with them for feeling like that. Stress is about how we perceive the demands being placed upon us and the resources that we have to respond to those demands. So we can think about how can we perhaps alter the demands, and maybe we can't really because it's exams and we don't really have much control over that, but how can we resource ourselves to better respond? And firstly, it's vital, I think, that people normalize stress. One of the elements in Everyday Matters that I personally have found the most helpful in terms of well-being at times of stress is self-compassion. So that's one whole module within the Everyday Matters program. Self-compassion research, again, is absolutely fascinating. Essentially it means being kind to ourselves. Oftentimes we're very kind to other people, and we can be a very good, supportive friend or family member, but we might talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to those we love. So the self-compassion research shows that if we can talk in a more kind way to ourselves, it has benefits for both us and for other people. So there's a 3-step self-compassion break that I think is really, really valuable at kind of those crunch times. So firstly, it's to acknowledge how you're feeling in the moment without blowing it out of proportion or without minimizing it and really, dismissing your feeling. So you say, yeah, I am stressed right now. So you're not saying, I'm more stressed than I've ever been in my entire life, and I'm never going to be able to do this. And also thinking everybody else probably is fine and coping much better than I am. So the first step is mindfulness. That's literally just being able to tune into and validate how you're feeling in that moment. The second step is common humanity, which is a bit of a jargony word, but it's essentially trying to remind ourselves that we're not alone. So oftentimes when we feel under pressure, we tend to think everybody else has it sorted and I'm the only one who keeps messing up. So common humanity is about saying, so the first thing is mindfulness. Yeah, I am feeling stressed. The second thing is lots of people find this time of year stressful or find exams stressful. I'm not the only person. And then the third part is the kindness part, where you offer yourself words of kindness or soothing kind of physical comforts. So you might put your hand on your tummy or you might kind of rub your own hand, or whatever physical gestures are soothing, because we know that physical caring gestures can trigger really positive hormones and positive kind of neurotransmitters. But the caring words then might be, well, you know, so it sounds a bit jargony, and one of the things is that you kind of have to find a little format that works for you, that doesn't kind of go, oh, that sounds, you know, rubbish. But I know for me, at times that I've been anxious, I found it able to say, yeah, I am anxious. You know, lots of people would find this situation stressful or anxiety provoking. You know, may I be calm, or, you know, may I find ease, or the other thing that, you know, people say is trying to find a phrase that's soothing. So that might be, you know, this too will pass, which again sounds very trite, but we know that in stressful times, our sense of perception around time can go a bit awry, and we think this is going to go on forever. So that's this 3-step self-compassion break. I give up 2 other suggestions. One is, again, thinking about our use of language and how we talk to ourselves. I think the 2 words "for now" are really, really valuable to help us remind ourselves that this won't last forever. So yeah, I'm really stressed for now. It helps to bring us back to right now and not feel as overwhelmed. The other word, drawing on learning mindset theory that people might have heard of, is adding the word "yet" to sentences. So I don't feel like I've established a good revision habit yet, or this essay really isn't coming together for me yet. So that word "yet" is a really critical component in terms of shifting the way we think about our capacity to change and to learn. Another key learning mindset behavior that I would encourage everybody to use is to see asking for help as a positive learning behavior. It's not a sign of weakness. So the research shows, again, around growth mindset, that people who know that they can influence and change the structure and the function of their brain. The brain is plastic, particularly at the age and stage of our students. So the research tells us now that the brain is particularly plastic and particularly sensitive to what it is exposed to in adolescence, from age 10 to age mid-20s. So really just to encourage people that, you know, if they are finding things particularly stressful, who are the support people that they can call on? That might be friends, family members, staff within UCC, lecturers, people like yourself, James, looking online for information, and I can share some other links with you afterwards. But really just crucially, it's to see it as, well, I'm looking for help with this. It's not, oh, I need help because I'm such a failure. So they'd be my tips, really.
That's it's great, Eithne. I mean, I've sat in on a lecture and a talk that you've given to us before, and I'm sitting there now. You've probably noticed I'm jotting down notes, because it's like gold, and you need, like anything, a skill. You need to practice it, and you need to be reminded of these things. But like the thing, like there's so many things there that I'll be going back to, and I suppose what I'm taking away and what I'm probably saying to the students is just take that time to sort of, you know, if you are feeling any bit overwhelmed, or even just for, not even so much overwhelmed, but you've got the time to take for good practice, is to spend that time and think about how you're managing and what your routine is, and whether you can sort of refresh and do it better, do it in a more effective way. There's so many things there we could keep going on, Eithne, I suppose, but like today's time, unfortunately, is kind of somewhat limited, but it's something I can see us talking again, if you're open to that. And
very much so.
And I would say to students, I'd love to get feedback from students if they want to do more of this, because there's so many doable things that's all within our power to do. We don't need so much textbooks, or we don't need materials to do this. This is just something that we can look at and apply to our everyday life. So thank you so much for that. All of the guests on the podcast so far I had 3 quick questions thrown at them at the end of the interview. So I'm gonna keep you in the same company there, and I'm gonna ask you a little bit about yourself. So so the first question coming at you is your favorite music or your favorite band artist?
So thanks for giving me the little heads up that this was coming down the line. REM would probably be my favorite band from all time, and I still love their music, and in particular their early music. But now, maybe it's because I'm getting older, I'm in the UCC choir, and I just adore choral music. Again, that, if we think about looking after ourselves, like that's something that kind of lifts my soul. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do much during COVID, because choral singing is not a good thing in COVID. All that breathing and spreading germs. But hopefully we'll get back to it. Hopefully. So that's music.
Great. Favorite TV show?
You know what? I really don't watch much TV. I prefer reading, but what my family and I have been enjoying lately is, and this is so weird because I would never have ever thought it, but we've been watching on Netflix the F1, so the Formula One series on Netflix, which is a bit random, but it's very watchable.
Excellent. No, I've seen a few episodes of that as well, so I can see kind of they dramatize it very much, the characters and
absolutely stuff. Yeah.
And the last question then, best bit of advice that you would give or that you have ever given? So you were ever given, sorry.
I really mean this when I say this. Like, for me, learning about self-compassion has been absolutely transformative. So I think in terms of advice, particularly the common humanity bit, is, nobody has it all sorted all of the time. Nobody, no matter what they look like on the outside. And maybe if somebody's going through a steadier phase in their life, and you're going through a rockier one, that will reverse. Nobody has it sorted all of the time. That's my best advice, really.
Thank you. And I should probably have left you off that last question, because you spent the last 15 minutes giving us some very, very good advice. So it's like, but there we go. It's been great to talk, Eithne. We're at the end of this episode of the FE Hit. I would encourage students to follow up with the links. Do spend that bit of time, follow up with me, come back to me if you want to know more. But just thanks for you all for listening. Thanks to Eithne for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'd encourage everyone to follow us on the YouTube or on the Podbean link. For now, that's everything. Stay safe. Remember, just check your emails, and I'll see you the next time. Thanks.